This is Brace for Impact, the podcast where business leaders tell the real story behind success, the ups and downs and the things not everyone gets to see. I'm your host, Skip Maloney, and I will give you access into the minds of leaders from various industries, big, small, startups, large institutions, small institutions, household names, and names you don't know yet. Before I introduce today's guest, Danica, do you want to say a few words about today's sponsor?
Today's episode is brought to you by Keller Williams Realty Southwest. Are you ready to make Texas home? Introducing Sahar Khatib, one of Houston's top real estate agents for the past 5 years, specializing in relocations, veterans, and first-time homebuyers. Whether you're moving across the country or stepping up to luxury, Sahar's got you. With strong negotiation skills, fast communication, and deep market knowledge, she doesn't just help you find a home. She helps you secure the right one with the best terms and a smooth journey to the closing table. From virtual showings to smart strategies, she will make your move seamless and stress-free. Keller Williams, guiding you home step by step, mile by mile. You can reach Sahar at saharkhatib@kw.com, SAHARKHATIB@kw.com, or by visiting her at www.saharkhatib.com. That's www.saharkhatib.com.
Well, hey, listen, thank you, Scott, for joining us. I want to do a quick introduction, and as I tell most of my guests, they don't want to hear from me; they want to hear from you. So I will ask fire my questions away, but please enlighten us with your answers. I do want to full disclosure to my audience. A lot of business leaders, a lot of CEOs, a lot of C-suites that listen, and also a lot of business students as well. So they're going to want to hear the ups and downs, the good, the bad, and everything in between for your success and learn a little bit about achievers as well. But full disclosure for the audience, Scott and I have known each other for a bit. We both share a love of baseball. That's a certainly commonality that we have, and Scott, your company that you're the CEO of is based in Toronto, so they just had a heart-wrenching World Series loss. My first question, is everyone okay?
Everyone is okay. I would tell you, though, it took a few days.
Yeah.
It's being a Boston Red Sox fan, I vividly remember 2003 when I think it was Aaron Boone hit the home run in the extra innings. It was that type of a feeling. The great news is the Blue Jays, I think, over exceeded, right, the expectations, and from what I can gather, they have a really amazing culture. So
Yeah.
the hope is
We're
that
gonna get
many
into
of them
that.
will be back.
We're going to get into that, but I think the thing I fear for that team is I think they showed they were inches away from winning a World Series. If that guy just got there a little bit faster, he would score the run, game over. So will they be there again if they're overachieving? No pun intended. But anyway, we're joined today by Scott Landers. Scott is the CEO of Achievers, and we're going to talk a lot about Achievers. But before we get there, tell a little bit about yourself. Talk a little bit about yourself. Tell the audience who you are, where you came from. You had other leadership roles. Just a quick, brief introduction to who you are.
Sure. So again, I'm Scott Landers. Skip, thanks for having me here today. So my story dates back to upstate New York. So I'm originally an upstate New Yorker, was born and bred, and moved here to Massachusetts only 15 years ago. So in New England years, like I am a newborn, right? Because there's folks, it's generations.
Yeah.
And you can see now that I live here why people stay and love it here. But originally from New York, grew up in Albany, New York, and ended up going to college at Lemoyne College, which is based out of Syracuse, an amazing educational institution. And I was fortunate enough to be on the baseball team there. So that was some of my best experiences of learning how to be a great teammate came from Lemoyne, as well as how to be a business person. So majored in accounting, wasn't sure what I wanted to do, but in high school I liked math, and I was like, oh, I'll give this accounting thing a try. And so Lemoyne was great for many reasons: baseball, education. I also met my wife there.
Oh,
She
okay.
graduated a year behind me, and we got married a few years later. 4 kids, now one grandchild, another one on the way. But I'll
Wow.
go back to make this intro even longer. So when I left Lemoyne, I got my start in public accounting, which at Coopers and
Nice.
Lybrand, which is now
Okay.
PwC. What a great place to start. You get to see so many businesses, so many different industries. And if anything, it taught me what I didn't like, versus what I did. And when I left there, I ended up getting into the software industry. So I've been about 30 years in software now. Very fortunate that 2 of my stints took up 25 of those 30 years. So got
Nice.
great exposure to the right business at the right time, but the right cultures, that
Hmm.
would allow me to develop over those decade-long periods. And moved out here to Boston for my second stop in software with a company called Monotype, which was the leader in the font industry.
That
Originally as the
fascinates me.
CFO.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could probably talk an hour just on fonts,
Yeah.
because
You and I
people are
did, I
talk,
think. We had lunch in just outside of Boston, and I was
we
like, that exists? It blew my mind.
we
It was a
did.
really cool
Yeah.
company.
I'm
So tell
always
a little bit
afraid.
about that company, what you guys did and all that.
Yeah, so it was the leader in the font industry. So think Times New Roman, Arial, Helvetica, Cambria, Calibri. And if you think of it, it's like music, right? Like
Yeah.
this is art, it's IP, and someone owns it. So we were like the Netflix of fonts,
Yeah.
and or the Spotify of fonts, and our fonts were used, I think, in 98% of the devices you use. Over half the world's brands. I think the stat is actually 98% of any word ever written was in one of Monotype's fonts. So just an
Wow.
amazing journey where we went from an OEM to an enterprise business, which is where I got to experience being a CEO for the first time. So about
Okay.
halfway through my journey, we went into the enterprise, which is where I had some background in, had a great leader in my boss, who was the CEO and founder, who gave me the opportunity to spread my finance wings, and
Okay.
it worked out. And so that's how I became a CEO. And then I've been here in HR tech in my last 2 stints, first with a company called Harvard, which tried to solve the hiring problem. And now I'm here at Achievers, which is based out of Toronto. And we're trying to solve the engagement and retention problem that
Yeah.
exists out there today.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I can tell the audience, I know you're not from Boston originally because you pronounce it Achievers, and of course we pronounce it Achievas.
A funny story.
So we'll get you to drop the I's eventually.
You're not gonna be able to control me. I'll drop in a lot of funny stories along the way, but
Oh,
on the
please.
Boston accent.
Yeah.
When I was negotiating to take the job at Monotype, my boss, who was born and bred from Watertown, he was giving me my offer, and he was trying. He was saying 240, and he kept saying
40.
240. Yeah, and I had him repeat it 3 times, and I still couldn't understand him. And I said, Doug, this may get me fired, but can you spell it? So I don't write down. I'm shocked I got hired there anyway, but it ended up
Believe
working
me,
out.
I get into so much heat down here. First of all, I get picked on quite a bit. I'm looking at someone in particular over here, Danica, because no one understands me, and they always say to me, "What? Can you repeat that?" I'm like, "What do you mean? Can I repeat that?" And now I think they have a funny accent down here in Philly. It's order, family. I mean, you name it. It's different. But my quick story: when I moved to Philly, I moved to Center City, and I got to know people at work, and they said, "So, where'd you work? Where'd you end up? Where'd you end up buying?" And I said, "I bought a place on Arch Street." And everyone's like, "Yeah, I don't know that." And it's a major street. I mean, the American flag was stitched on Arch Street. Betsy
Yeah,
Ross lived on Arch Street, and no one knew what I was talking about. And they said, "Spell it." I go, ARCH, and they said, "Oh, Orch Street." So
the great
yeah,
thing
I
is, Skip,
learned.
though, we all got something that's a little bit different, and it's what makes the
That's
world
right.
great, right? We all come at things from different perspectives, even different
Yeah.
accents.
My disappointment is I thought I got rid of it. I thought I got rid of it out of my
Yeah.
nomenclature, and it didn't. So CEO at Achiever. So talk to me a little bit about that, because you had to make a transition. And what are the things that you learned? I mean, when you were the CFO, How do you think differently as a CFO and transition into the CEO? I've got a lot of CFOs that listen to this
Yeah.
podcast that have those aspirations to be a CEO. What did you have to
Yeah.
do mentally to make that shift?
It it's going to sound a little crazy, but it actually came natural, right? And I think the CFO is actually one of those areas where it is a real natural progression. Because
Hmm.
as the CFO, you're essentially the trusted advisor to the business, right? Not only
Yeah.
to the CEO, right, but to all of your peers on the C-suite. And so what I always try, I was never the best with numbers, believe it or not, and I wasn't the most detail oriented guy. But what I loved was putting together the puzzle. I love the storytelling, right, and the connections that you have to make within a business to ultimately go and execute, to get people to follow you, right? Whether
Yeah.
that was employees, whether that was shareholders, whether that was customers. So I was always kind of geared towards that way. And I think because I always digested things simply, I always kind of had this propensity to continually just try and simplify what we were doing, right? So we could, and I think because of that, I endeared myself to my peers, right? And so, it was not unusual. Like if they had a meeting coming up with the CEO, they'd give me a ring and say, "Hey, can I come see you the day before? I
Yeah.
want to run through this pitch with you, right? What do you think he will be cued in on? What do you think we're missing?"
Yep.
And I think because of that, it was really twofold. I was able to help them, but I learned a lot,
Yeah.
right, about our business, but then about the nuances within each function, right, and then how those different functions connect, right. There's always a natural tension between selling and marketing and between product and engineering. And so when it came time for me to move over to CEO, that was a lot of the same skills that I used when I was in that role. Because one of the things you realize when you step into the CEO role, is because for years we go up through our function, and a lot of times we're the smartest person in the room, at least for a
Yeah.
period of time.
And that's not good.
You get up to the CEO role, you are never ever the smartest person in the room,
Hmm.
right? Every one of my direct reports knows 10x, right, of what I know, or knows 10x more than what I do about their function. Even today, the CFO role, I've been out of it for a decade, right? And
Yeah.
so much has changed. And so, I really thought it was natural, maybe leaning back into some of those sports analogies. I was never the best player on the team, but I was a great
Yep.
teammate. And this is all
Yep.
about, creating those great teams. I will say, one of the big things, and you've got a lot of students, you said that maybe tune in here, business students, find yourself a company where they really focus on development. And the only reason I became CEO is our business was transitioning from OEM based to enterprise based. And I found myself on a team with a lot of legacy folks, 20, 25 years experience, but none of them had experience in enterprise software. And my CEO at the time allowed me to go and be the face of that new initiative. So I
Yeah.
was the one who worked with the regional salesperson who had been piloting this new approach for us in this new business. And he didn't need to do that, right? He himself took a back seat. We would go and present to investors down on Wall Street, and I would be the mouthpiece or the growth engine, right from the CFO chair. And I will be eternally grateful, right, to him for allowing me to spread my wings. There was never any territorial battles, right? And the other thing for my peers to accept me into that room, right? Because now they were kind of taking pseudo direction, from someone who had been a CFO for 20 years, right? And
Right.
that I found myself in a great spot to allow me to grow.
That's great. I loved what you talked about though a little earlier about the storytelling, and that is a skill. So when I think about CEOs, most CEOs come from the sales organization, finance, marketing, right? They come from different avenues, but I think the commonality that you just hit upon is the ability to tell stories. And in your case, you'd have to tell stories through numbers and through data. And that's not something you see a lot in CFOs. At InterDigital, I'm very, very lucky. Our CFO, Rich Brensky, was very good at that. He takes sometimes very complex numbers. I mean, you think about it. Listen, all due
Yeah.
respect, I've been in many a town hall, many a all hands meeting, and when a CFO gets up there, not sure what they're talking about, and they lose half the audience. And so the ability to tell a story through numbers is unique. And I haven't heard a lot of people talk about that before. So did you pick that up, or is it something that kind of you gravitated towards?
I think, like anything, right? We have strengths and weaknesses, and because I was never great in the detail and the complexity, I always
Yeah,
had this need to simplify. And storytelling is a great way to
love it.
simplify, right? Like most
Yeah,
movies have the same plot, right? That get repeated over and over again. And so I
yeah.
think, it kind of helped me, and I'll geek out on you for a bit because I said this once, and I don't know if I've ever heard anybody else say it, but I always looked at the balance sheet, right? Like that was the photograph,
Yeah.
right? That balance sheet is what do things look like on December
End result.
31st of
Yeah.
2025, right? But then, like, you could go and say, you could look at that picture and you're like, oh, there's three people by a lake, and they look like they're having fun, right? But then the whole question is how did they get there? And why are they
Yeah.
there, right? And that's when you go and you analyze the income statement, right, and the cash flows, and you say they went there. It wasn't a family reunion. Someone had just passed away and they went to this lake, which was their mom's
Right.
favorite spot. And this is what brought them there versus somebody, another way you could have gotten there. It was the family reunion, or it was just a weekend and people needed to
Yeah.
recharge. So I always loved that bit. And again, when you're running a business and being a CEO, so much of what you have to think about in the future for growth plans has to be scenario based, right? So even there too, when you're now thinking forward of the things that hasn't happened, you can take your best laid plan,
Yeah.
think of it in that story or in that movie. But what happens if we get to XYZ and we don't beat the villain, right? And
Yeah.
the villain still, still has a superpower that we have to figure out. What are we going to do next? How are we going to pivot? And I just think it's so helpful, right? Because as the CEO, you really have one job, and it's to get everybody else aligned into where you're going and be engaged and feel as though they can do their best work. And that storytelling element of it, I think, is just it's really really powerful and something I didn't necessarily catch on to when I first got the job.
Oh, really?
Right in the beginning, it was funny. I got, surround yourself with good people, Skip. I remember my CHRO was like maybe 1 or 2 months in, and we were having a company meeting, and they say, "Oh, you should talk about this." And I said, "Well, I talked about that last time." And they said, "You need to repeat the same 3 to 5 things over and
Yeah.
over and over, and then
That's
connect
right.
the things that are happening back to those most important things."
That's right.
Because, in the beginning, I thought, like, "Oh, I already said that. Are they thinking I'm repeating myself?" So,
Yeah.
again, along the journey, when you become the CEO, you don't stop developing, right? It is a
Yeah.
new, you're into something new, every 3 months, it seems, or even more
Right.
often than that. It's like your parents. You look at your parents, you think they got it all figured out. They don't,
Right.
because then you
Yeah.
become one and you've
Yeah.
been one for 20 years and you're still figuring it out as you go.
And then the light bulb goes off and you understand them a little bit better,
That's
right?
right.
That's how it
That's
happens.
right.
I listen. So look. As I said at the top of the podcast, I've gotten to know you a little bit over the last couple of years, and as I got to know Achievers, it just seemed like a perfect match. You have a great team. One of the things that I like to measure about anyone that I talk to, do business with, whatever, is how do I measure the culture? How can I judge the culture? What's it like to work there? So I'll give you an example. Uh, Back in the day, years ago, they used to have these commercials for Southwest Airlines, and they always had their employees in the commercials, and you could just tell they loved the place. They loved the company. Their
Hmm.
culture just came out in the commercials, and to me, I looked at that from a investment perspective and said that's probably a strong culture. And when you started to talk to leaders from that company, they would tell you it was a strong culture. So you're in the business of culture. You're in the business of recognition. You're in the business of reward, right? So in my world, right, you and I connect through that. And
Hmm.
how do I connect my employees so that they feel appreciated? How do they feel? Do they feel alignment? Tell the audience a little bit about Achievers, if you could, in your time there. You've been there now for a year and a half, 2 years?
Yeah, I'm in my second year. So it's,
Second year. Okay, there you go. So tell the audience
yeah.
a little bit about Achievers.
Yeah, so we are the leader in recognition and reward. I feel so fortunate to have found Achievers. First, it's a great business, right? It's
Yeah.
what I stood up in front of the company the first day. I said, I don't think you realize it, but you work for one of the top 1% of all SaaS businesses in the world,
Wow.
right? The number of companies that are over 100 million, that are growing, that are profitable, that are global with tier one customers, there's not that many. So,
Yeah.
I felt so fortunate and quite honestly, a ton of pressure to have such a great asset, right? And be the steward of getting us into the next frontier. But being in recognition and reward, we're solving big problems. First, before I even get into the company
Yeah.
aspect of it,
Yeah.
as you and I have talked, Skip, we are in unusual times, right? If we think back to when we grew up, right? I think I heard this thing recently. There's three venues. There's your home, there's your work, and there's your hobby. You need that one other place to go. For some
Yeah.
people, it's
Yeah.
their church, it's their sports organization,
Sure.
whatever that may be. Our home life is very different now than it used to be. A lot of
Yeah.
times we're working in it, right? Where I am right now. We live in a world where people are very divided, right? And have very
Yeah.
passionate opinions on things. So our communities don't feel the same. The world's gone digital, right? So that third venue where we used to go physically,
Right.
right? So many young people today aren't going to those places physically, they're going there digitally, right? And there's something lost there in that. And then there's the work element of it, right? Which has been completely turned upside down. When you and I went to work in those first 10, 15, even 20 years, right? The folks we worked with likely worked 3 feet from us.
Yep.
And our boss was, 20 feet down the road, and after we left a meeting, we walked the hall back with someone and they probably told us we did a good job, right? Or maybe
Yep.
told us something we could do better. When
Yeah.
you asked for help, someone popped their head over, they helped them, you thanked them,
Yep.
right? Today, post COVID, and this toothpaste can't be put back in the tube, we are working differently
Yeah.
than we've ever worked before. At the same time, the world is dealing with AI, right? And all other sorts of technologies that are changing the game for each one of our businesses, right? So we like to say here at Achievers, our vision is to change the way the world works. And that's a really ambitious goal when you're trying to do it while the world is changing as fast as it is today. So of those three areas, we're laser focused on that work element of it. Now,
Yeah.
we would
Yeah. Yeah.
argue if we make people feel better from 9 to 5, that has a ripple effect.
Yep.
If people feel valued, if people feel seen, if people feel like they belong and they're doing a good job, I don't know about you, but when you go home from a good day at work versus a bad day at work, you're different for your family. You show
Yeah.
up differently as much as we try and draw that line, right? You're better in your community. So we love the fact that what we do has a ripple effect. And the reality is there's real big issues today, right? 26% of employees today would say they're actively engaged.
Mm-hmm.
And I get all this. We have a great research arm called Achievers Workforce Institute that does a state of recognition every year. 92% of employees are unclear about what's expected of them at work.
Unbelievable.
23% don't feel as though they're equipped for unexpected challenges,
Mm-hmm.
right? And Skip, I was given those scenarios and the storytelling as we look to the future, whether it's your business, mine, or anybody else's, it's not going to go as planned.
Yeah.
We're going to meet challenges we didn't anticipate, and our folks don't feel equipped. And then only 25% of people feel appreciated at work, right? That's a problem, right? And the great connector in making all of those things better is recognition.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. It is the glue, right, that we believe can make everything better, and our customers prove it out. Right.
It's
'Cause
also
you have,
feedback too, right? It's feedback.
it is.
And so I want to ask you a quick question on that, and I'm going to pull a little of your baseball background,
Sure.
infuse mine, but in sports in general, right? I grew up, as I'm sure you and I are the same age, right? And which is to say, we're in our early 30s. Yeah.
I feel 54, but you're right, early 30s.
I know. I do too, and I'm 55. We were getting, as athletes, you're used to getting feedback constantly. I mean, it's not daily. It was probably minute by minute, hour by hour. You had a coach either yelling in your ear or giving you feedback, positive affirmations that you're doing something right. And I think athletes, to some sense, are used to getting constant feedback. And then you take that into the workforce, and then change it so they get feedback once a year, there's a disconnect. And do you see that parallel in your former life as an athlete, and then when you switched over to the corporate world?
100%, right? In fact, I had a coach who was an amazing coach, but it was kind of old school, right? Like he wasn't really big on like if you got feedback, he actually told you if I give you feedback, there's something wrong, right?
Yeah.
We would look at leading today and it would be very different. But even if I go back to that time, when I felt like I was in a place where they thought I was doing good, my performance increased 2, 3,
I was
5x.
the same
I
way.
felt like I could run through a wall. And
Same
there's
way.
other times, you know, where you didn't think you were doing good, right? And your performance went. But a lot of times when you thought you were doing bad, the reality was you weren't. But
Yeah.
because you didn't have that constant drip, like you're doing good, you're okay, right? You're learning, you're developing. This wasn't supposed to be easy. The first time you went in to close a game, right? Or Skip, if were you a lefty hitter or righty hitter?
Lefty. Yeah. Lefty.
Right. So, the first 10 times you face a lefty professional pitcher, it's going to be a
Yeah.
little bit different than when you were in high school.
That
Right.
was horrible. Yeah.
And I think you combine that today with just the expectation of younger people, like everything for them comes faster.
Yeah.
Right. I post something. If I don't get a certain number of likes within an hour, that person may take it down because now they're
Yeah.
embarrassed they didn't get enough feedback.
That's right. The dopamine
Right.
hits
But
weren't coming at the right speed.
it's that instant gratification. And I think, what
Yeah.
they've taught us, actually, I don't think we should go so far to do it constantly, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But
I agree.
that regular, consistent, frequent feedback, if that's
Yeah.
coming once a week, once every 2 weeks, what it shows in the data for engagement, retention, but then ultimately business performance,
Yep.
it's through the roof.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing here, Skip, that's a risk for the business folks on the phone. And maybe I think about this because my children, and I know yours are, they're in that working age group. They're young,
Yeah.
young professionals. When we went to work, it was kind of like the world is your oyster. You can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
Today, the vast majority of growth is concentrated in what do they call it, the Mag 7. And all you hear about is how AI wants to take your job. It all
Right.
used to be about people. And I think we have an opportunity in my role and what we do at Achievers and in your role as the chief people officer. We've got to bring it back to the people.
Yeah.
Because if I'm a young person, why would I be loyal, right, to an organization? Why would I trust an organization to go above and beyond and think I'm going to get that development if everything I'm hearing in the outside is how this wonderful technology is just going to cannibalize what I do and make them more profit? You and I know that's not reality, right? We're going to need a lot of that AI to just keep the world going, right? Because there's less people than there used to be. But we are going to need the best of each and every one of us to make our organizations great. And I think we got to start talking about the people, but not just talking, doing for them in a different way.
Yeah. Amen. Amen. I've been I've been up and down with the concerns that most everyone has with AI. I'm more bullish than anything. I look at it as a great tool to enhance the human experience. I know it's a mouthful, but I look at it, and even with my own college age children, and we talk about AI and what that's going to do. And I say, you got to first of all, it's not coming, it's here. And what can you do to augment what you do, you're offering to the human race? And so we're just scratching the surface. But going back to the sports analogy, I mean, the athletes during the COVID era, the athletes had a really hard time because they got feedback from the fans all the time. Certainly, if you're from Boston, they would let you know if you're doing great, and they're going to let you know when you're not doing so great. And
That's right.
so you're used to getting that feedback on a pretty instantaneous way, right? But I think, when I see the disconnect here is companies that kind of hold that back to twice a year, once a year. But I was exactly like you as an athlete. If my coach, or if I heard the roar of the crowd, if I did something good on the field, I wanted to do it again.
That's right.
It was like that. I want to get another like, or whatever they want to call it. I couldn't wait to do something above and beyond that blew my coaches' minds or the fans or my teammates more than anything, really. And there's science behind that, and a lot of people are missing that. And some of the old school leaders will say, "Well, I don't want it to be a country club, and I don't want it to be just, giving awards and rewards out like candy." How do you respond to people like that look at it and say, "Oh, well, you're just spreading the love out too much"?
Well, the first thing I'd ask him is, do you want to be the best in your industry? Because if you do, you better pay attention to it, because it is not it is so much more than a thank you program, right? If you go all the way to the CFO and the CEO at the end, beyond culture, it's driving business results,
Yep.
right? So if you said, who does better work, engaged or disengaged employees?
There you go.
Who stays longer? Just the hard cost of replacing folks. And then the magic, I talked about Achievers being a great business, from a profile perspective, but one of the things I feel so lucky about is how we've gone about solving this. So you talked about science. I mentioned the Achievers Workforce Institute, which does primary research so that we can go and build a product that does yield those results, right? And one of the things we pride ourselves in is actually being embedded right in the flow of work, right? Because if you think about it, the recognition system is the system actually that everyone has access to. Everyone.
Yeah.
The frontline worker, all the way up to the CEO, all globally, everybody has access to the same system. And when you go to it, there's a lot of goodness there. There's a lot of fun there. There's a lot of celebration there. There's a lot of learning there. And so we make it easy for folks by being embedded with those other tools you may use all the time, right? Where within your Microsoft platform, you come out of that meeting, you can just go right to the meeting invite, hit the Achievers button, do a recognition for that team that just presented to the C-suite for the first time, goes right over to the system. We've got great partnerships with folks like Workday. So if you're going and doing a mid-year performance review, your team that's been teammates that have been recognized, you see all that right in the Workday system. How many times have you sent an email that says, "Oh, I got a feedback session coming up. Can any of you tell me what your experience has been working with Sally or Tim?"
Right.
Now all of Sally's and Tim's recognitions are right in there, and it brings to life all those things they did. And we just think it's a super exciting time. But there is a difference, right, between those. You can tell the difference between the customers who view it as a thank you program and those that actually look at it as having a meaningful impact in driving their business. And the reality is, it doesn't, when you talk about just an award or this and that, high frequency non-monetary recognition is the foundation.
Yeah.
That's the 80-20. Like, my son doesn't need a $500 bonus, spot bonus. What he needs is someone that he interacted with to tell him that he did a great job, thanking him for going above and beyond, or maybe exemplifying one of the values, right, that is so important to that company's culture, and then having his peers and his boss see it unsolicited.
Yeah.
Do you think he's going to repeat that behavior again?
Sure is.
Like, we're going to repeat what's recognized, and the power of that. And again, fortunate to have great customers, anywhere from 1,000 employees, 500 employees, all the way up to 150,000, right? Yeah. Seeing the unlock in their business is pretty magical.
So you referenced Workday. So your product is intertwined with Workday. We're Workday houses ourselves. In fact, I think the last 10 years I've been Workday. So my question was, what type of platforms does Achievers work with? So obviously Workday. Anything else? SAP? Any others?
Yeah, it works with all of them. So SAP, it works across the board: UKG, SAP, Workday. And we have varying degrees of partnership. I would say good partnerships with all of them. In the case of Workday, where a lot of customers are platformed on, we've got a very deep partnership. We're a Workday Platinum partner. We've invested heavily in integration. So I talked about the bi-directional performance reviews. There's several other things. There's actually, Workday is a customer of ours, right? Well, we're thankful for that. They're actually pushing the envelope. So if you go beyond just culture, engagement, and recognition and driving performance, Workday won an award with us. They actually pushed it into L&D. So how many times, now imagine you're 100,000 folks, and L&D is critical to safety, right? Yep. If you don't have a good safety record, that can be quite expensive and very detrimental to your employees. connected in the recognition system into the L&D program, I think they saw a 91% completion rate in 30 days or 60 days. Don't quote me, right?
Wow.
But whatever that completion rate was
Yeah.
materially better than when it wasn't connected with recognition. So now let's say you complete all your courses, you get recognized in the platform. You may or may not get $1,000 worth of points, which is $10, that you can go
Yeah.
and put towards something you want. We've also seen, and staying on the workday for a second, another hot topic, as you know, is skills.
Yeah.
So I could tell you right now who within our organization is leading from a values perspective. I could tell you within our organization which value aren't we recognizing very
Really?
much, right? That could present an opportunity. Like one of ours, like when I came in, we looked back and we said, okay, we've got 5 core values. The one that's least recognized is be bold. And actually, when we saw that, we're like, you know what? That makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Because we need to be more aggressive,
Right.
right? Like we are
Did you see it in
standing
the
up.
lack of innovation because of that? Did you see like you guys could have been more innovative because people
Well, I
weren't
think we're
being
innovative
bold?
in the mind of customers, right? But
Yep.
that
Right.
so think about when you scale, right?
Yep.
Internally, when you scale, when you hit that $100 million mark, it wasn't so long ago that you were founder run,
Yeah.
right? And when you say, what do you do next? People go and ask the founder, what do we do
Right.
next? So one of
Up
the
until
things that I tried to bring in and said, like, you're not going to get any of that from me. Actually, my entire performance review is based on all of you,
yeah.
right? So you are the ones who are closest to the customer. You are the ones who are closest to the work, right? I want you to be bold,
Yeah.
right? And figure out what the issue is and suggest the solution, right? And work with your teammates across functions to go and do that. So it was less about the customer because
Gotcha.
we're top rated, but internally to build those muscles so that we're not dependent on one great engineer or one great salesperson or a founder CEO, because this is what I need to be successful. We
Yeah.
need to let the people loose. So, you've got that on values, but why can't you do that on skills? You actually could,
Yeah.
right? Because in each one of these recognitions, oftentimes they're recognizing a particular skill. Your ability to project manage, your ability to multitask, your ability to innovate, right? So we're doing a lot of work with our partners today because they're doing a ton of this work,
Sure.
thinking about skills taxonomy as jobs change so fast, right? Internal mobility, right? Reskilling and upskilling is a big deal. You could be sitting on a whole repository of data within that recognition system from people organically identifying where those skills exist in your
Yeah.
organization.
Yeah.
So it's those types of things with our partners where we look to continue to push the envelope. And then there's all sorts of great stories. Like basically anywhere you want to influence a behavior. Again, you got culture, engagement, retention covered. To drive a business outcome, this can be used.
Yeah. So
We've had
I
people
think
use
about what
it.
you just said, and my company is a highly innovative company. We've got more PhDs than I can count within the organization. But all that being said, you still have to tap into the intellectual curiosity that most people have, but don't have the opportunity to practice it. And so what I'm hearing from your product or products, it really infuses that intellectual curiosity. So talk about the skills, right? And looking at if I can pinpoint and say, let's say our innovation was down and we're an innovative company, that would be disastrous. But how can you got to reward the people for being innovative. You got to reward people
That's
for
right.
being intellectually curious. We happen to plug to LinkedIn Learning. We have a great relationship with LinkedIn Learning where we've got hundreds of thousands of courses at our fingertips. But if no one's plugging in and listening and learning, then what's the point? And rewarding them for learning, giving them time to learn is huge. It's huge. So I'm trying to pull what you're saying to see how I can then reward my team for
Yeah.
learning. Because in itself, yes, you could say, oh, they're going to
Yeah.
be rewarded for the knowledge that they inherit and that they consume. Yes, but there's also an upside for me that runs the
That's
company. You know
right.
what I mean? I want to benefit from it too.
Yeah. So I'll tap into 2 things here. One is what you're describing is you need a behavior change,
Yeah.
right? We can help you with that. The way we help you with that, is one of our secret ingredients, if you will, is our customer success team. So this is less about, can you use feature ABC on the product? There's certainly some of that. But 80% of where they spend their time is strategizing with you to understand where you're going, what your issues are, and then figuring out which campaigns you can use to go and supercharge this initiative. So in that example you just gave me, it sounds a lot like our Be Bold initiative. So we actually ran a campaign. I got up in front of the company and we said, here's all the data. We love what we do on these four, but we need you here, right? This is going to be, you are the future of this company, not whoever comes up and stands in front of the room over the next 5 years. So we ran a campaign about being bold. I think it was like a 30-day sprint. We asked people to go and identify those areas where people were taking that risk, getting out of their comfort zone, suggesting something new, right? And it goes under its own campaign. All of that data comes in. We celebrate, right? Yeah. All of those different activities. We then even may pick 5, right, and highlight them and have them win something different. But it brings up a thought here. The only way this works is if your executive team leans in and leads by example. So if your CEO and C-suite isn't in that system, liking those posts, boosting, so you can do a boost where, like, Skip, if I rewarded you with 1,000 points, the CEO could come in and say, oh my gosh, Skip, that's great. I'm going to like it and I'm going to boost it. And I just gave you another 1,000 points. Right. And all of a sudden it begins to build, right? This has happened 1 billion times in our platform. We've had 1 billion interactions around recognition and reward within our system. If you do that, you would be amazed at how quickly that flywheel begins to move. It's magical. But that executive piece, I'll even tell you one more. From the executive seat, I will not forget the day I got my first recognition.
Oh, really?
It was transformational, right? Again, going back to being a parent, everybody thinks you got it all figured out, right? So I go up there, my first couple of weeks, you stand in front of the company a few times, and I sounded pretty brave, right? And I sounded like I knew what I was doing. But, in the back of our mind, you got all sorts of insecurities back there. But the one thing I did learn, now I've been a CEO 3 times, I no longer worry about being liked. I worry about being respected. And the way I like to approach that is I would pride myself in being as open and transparent as you could possibly be. Yeah. So, you could be the CHRO, like 99% of the conversations I'd have with you, I'd have with an individual associate, and I only wouldn't say the things that would get us in trouble, right? But it's the same conversation. And so I remember, having been up a few times, and we talked about having this goal of building a forever company, right? And we said, we're this amazing, great company, but we're a good business. So how do we take this good business and match the company we are? So how do we take a good business to make it a great business? And I said, gosh, I don't know our business, but here on the surface, here are the things I see. And I talked about those things a few times. And I remember going back to my office. I was only there 2 to 4 weeks. And sure enough, I got a notification, you've been recognized. And if it was from an engineering associate, not a manager, who I had never met, who told me how appreciative he was because of how transparent I was being about the exciting future we could paint, but also the operational realities of what we needed to do to be better for our customers. How I felt after that, I will never forget. It was like the pitching coach saying, you made the team, or, you're no longer a midweek starter, you're a weekend starter. Yeah. I could have run through a wall that day.
Yeah. That's great. I love that story. I want to pull a little bit on the thread, though, of vulnerability and being transparent. You and I both have worked for people that guarded their insecurities, like you wouldn't believe, and you didn't know much. It was almost like they were trying to project themselves as being perfect. Talk a little bit about the respect, and I think probably the followership that you gain from people when you are vulnerable as a leader.
I think it's critical, especially today, right? And you've seen how things evolved. We tell people we want them to bring their whole self to work,
Yeah, yeah,
right? Which is hard,
yeah,
right? Because we're only equipped to deal with so much. But that is true, right? Like we embrace diversity. We want people to be different in all sorts of different ways. But we also want them to be their authentic, in order to get that diversity, they need to be their authentic selves, right? And so
yeah,
again, going back to modeling, right? Being authentic and being vulnerable, I just think is a huge unlock. People like to be around other folks that are sharing the same challenges as them. And I just think back, Skip, to any time I've had an issue, if I just talked about it and someone else said, I feel that way too, I instantly felt better. My
yeah,
problem felt much smaller, right? I
yeah,
wasn't on an island dealing with this. So I think, that vulnerability, whether it comes through transparency or being openly honest about what you're confronting, or even some things that, like, I'll write these letters about once a month, CEO notes, and oftentimes I'll talk about personal things in there. And I get more responses on those things
Oh,
than I
interesting.
do on the business things,
Yeah,
right? Whether it was how I dealt with anxiety in my mid 20s and it was almost crippling. And I got like 4 or 5 notes that said, oh my gosh, I thank you so much. Like, I feel that way too,
that's
right?
amazing.
And then you can see them in the hall and you can be like, you're going to be good, right?
Yeah,
You're good. You
yeah,
just keep, doing your thing. But one of the other reasons that I do it is I had this epiphany when when I had my very first CEO opportunity, and it kind of hit me like a ton of bricks. I actually realized that when you're the CEO, you actually don't do anything.
hmm,
Like, for the first time in your career, you really don't control any of the outcomes. Like, let's imagine your very first job. You're going in, you got a
yeah,
load of work to do, you get your work done, you do a good job, you get a raise, and you get promoted.
right.
You do that for a few years, you supervise a small team, you're still leaning on 90% of what you know to make sure those people do
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
Then you move up and you get a little bit further and you get a little bit further. And then you ultimately get to the CEO seat, and going back to, like, everyone around me knows 10 times more than me about
hmm.
the area that they're in.
But you got to put it all together, though. I mean,
You do, right? And that's a skill set. But I actually recognize that 100% of my success is based on the work of 700 people at Achievers every day.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
my very complex job, I have a job. My job is to do one thing. I got to get them aligned behind where we're going. In order to do that, they got to understand why, right? I've got to make sure that they're engaged and they feel as though that the work that they do matters in the context of where we're going.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
I just get up every day and think, how am I going to make the lives of 700 people better?
yeah,
And I think by being authentic, open, and transparent, it helps, right? Because they've got to really understand where we are, what the issues are, why we got to move here, why that's got to be different, why we need to move faster, slower, stop, start. And you don't get there without being transparent because they have to understand the why.
yeah, yeah. So you give great advice to and through your products and through your team on how to build sustainable cultures. What's it like inside the halls of Achievers?
It's, again, luckiest man on the planet. It is, the culture there is palpable.
Yeah,
And if we had a thing where we could show up on the screen a text message that I sent to my wife. I had been there 1 month. I was at the Gartner conference. First, on day one, I sent her a message that said, "This place is amazing."
yeah,
4 weeks in, I was at Gartner and I had met with a bunch of our customers for the first time. And then I was walking back to the hotel and I texted my wife. I'm like, I am so happy.
yeah,
I'm like, this is the best place I've ever worked. And now remember, I was at Monotype for 13 years. I
sure.
absolutely loved it. It made me a CEO. I worked tremendous people. And she's like, in considering you worked at Monotype, I never thought I would hear you say that again.
Wow.
And it's almost like, a culture is good when it's hard to describe. I would just
Yeah,
start by, like, they're good people.
yeah.
They're
There you go.
good human beings, right? That
Yeah.
if we were making widgets, they would care about each other just as much.
Yep.
And then they care so passionately about what we do, right? Which is so hard. So that's a much lighter lift for me,
Yeah.
right? Because they really love what they do for their clients. But maybe what I can do, instead of explaining what it is, I can explain what it does. You know, a culture is good or great, that if someone doesn't belong in it, it weeds them
No
out,
doubt. Yeah.
right? Like you've been in those areas, right? Have you ever gone into a group of people, you're like, oh, I don't know if I should be here,
Yeah.
right? Like if you're not good people, very respectful, enthusiastic, a desire to learn, a
Yeah.
desire to collaborate, if you're thinking about me more than the we,
Yeah.
achievers will they'll weed you out, right? You won't
Yes.
survive there. And you can remember back in the 80s and 90s, right? Like there would be movies made or a lot of case studies done on
Yeah.
just the opposite,
Right.
right? Even today, I won't mention the tech company, but some tech companies are like, if you don't go in and if you're not ready to hunt and kill your prey, like you're not going to survive there,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And we've got that going, but in the opposite. And it's something I'm super proud of. And it's something actually that we talk about because as we're going away from founder led to group led, if you will,
Yeah.
we've actually intentionally said our culture is going to change, but we need to keep the best of it and then grow and develop the next piece,
Yeah.
right? In the spirit or in the mold of achievers, right? And
Yep.
if you're going to distribute work and decisions, so we talk a lot about accountability,
Mhm.
right? That's kind of a new thing for us, right? That internal accountability to each other as we put in those systems. So it's been helpful, and and they'll help guide me. They'll tell me when I get it wrong, and they'll give me a recognition in the system when I'm getting it right.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this, and hopefully it's a long time from now. But when your tenure is complete at Achievers, what do you want your legacy to be?
Oh, that's a great question. I would say that I did my part in helping us become a forever company.
Hmm.
So I mentioned this before. I don't know if I've made this up. I've probably stolen it from someone, but it really resonates with me, and I think it does with the team. As you know, I'm working in tech, right? And there's a lot of tech companies that get started. There's not a lot of tech companies you hear about 30 years later,
Right. Exactly.
right? Because maybe they fail, maybe they get acquired, and then they get acquired and they're unrecognizable.
Yeah.
So my goal is to make us the best we can possibly be within our industry. So wherever our industry grows, if it's
Hmm.
standalone industry in 40 years, we're sitting at the top of that leaderboard,
Yeah.
right? And if somebody needs to be the aggregator, because not there's like 60 companies, not everybody's going to be able to survive on their own. That we're an aggregator in that business, right? That
Yeah.
we have the wherewithal and the respect for investors to put more capital behind this team because we're going to be able to do more for our customers, that whether that's within the recognition space or M&A around what recognition may ultimately do. If we're ever acquired one day, I want them to acquire us for the people and for those people to drive recognition to the ultimate heights, right? And driving behaviors and business outcomes 20 years from now down the road, right? And this is, a case where a Monotype's a great example. They're a standalone company. If they were ever acquired, right, they are going to be leading the font part
Yeah.
of whatever company buys them,
Right.
right? They are experts. And so for me, and I say being a part of it, right? So if I can help lead the team and steer us, and that'll be really great for our customers, and it'll be an amazing development journey for our employees.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah. You just reminded me of a time I had a moment with a CEO that I reported into a while back, and he was contemplating his legacy, if you will, and some of the decisions he was making, and you'll appreciate this living outside of Boston. I was just our office was outside of Boston. You probably know the name Digital Equipment Corp or DEC.
Yeah, yeah,
Practically every corporate building in and out of Boston was at one time owned by Digital Equipment Corp. I call them the Roman Empire of Boston. And he was in my office, and I looked out. And the building we were in, by the way, was a former DEC building. And I said to him, "Look out there." And I said, "Hey, do you remember who used to own that building?" He's like, "Yeah, Digital." I'm like, "How about that one?" "Yeah, Digital." "How about that one?" "Yeah, DEC." "What's your point?" I go, "Where are they now?" And he said, "They're nowhere." I said, "Exactly. Do you want
that's
to
right.
build this company into being, a Kodak, a DEC, or do you want to be someone like HP, for example,
That's
who
right.
pivoted, and they're not a used to be. They are still here. IBM, another one. Those companies are hard to find. Those companies are, I trade in the stock market quite a bit, but I also collect old shares of companies that are no longer in existence, and I put them in a frame and all that. Do you want to be that, or do you want to actually have a future? So I tried to get his mindset around leave something for this. When you're going to retire someday, you're going to look back, you're going to have your party, you're going to do all that sort of stuff. But you want your company to outlive all of us and your grandchildren, and so that's rare. And so I think you're doing it the right way. I think you're thinking about it the right way. And I'm going to embarrass you a little bit. I got one more question for you, but I think you're a great leader. I think your leadership style and I think your way that you approach business could be applicable to any business, by the way. I think Achievers is very lucky to have you. And so I'll just say that. One of the questions I wanted to ask you, I've got a lot of people that are sort of on the door, knocking on the door and becoming a CEO. If you could go back and talk to your younger self, whether it's in college or when you were just becoming a CFO or anything, and say, hey, man, do this differently, or if you could just give yourself some advice, what would that be?
Gosh, I think you've noticed whenever you ask me something, that could be a half-hour answer. I think, like as you're going up that ladder, right? You worry a lot, right? If you're a self-driven person, you've got more self-criticism and self-doubt than anyone. The first advice would be stop worrying, right? And then I would keep it really simple, right? Because I think life, if you keep it in context this way, can be better, which is do your best and see where it takes you.
Yeah.
Right. In doing your best, right, there's a lot under the hood there, right? It's things that you can individually control, right? The things that you can learn and develop over time.
Sure.
It's how you treat teammates, right? So, doing your best is not, help the company do its best in whatever form they need you. And you may be surprised where that takes you. I think there's, a couple of other tidbits I've learned, and going back to the Achievers and forever company bit, we'll do that if we listen to our customers.
Yeah.
Right? They are the smartest people. You've got to be customer driven. You've got to be outside in, not inside out. Right? There's very few companies like Apple that can say we're going to build this and they will come. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's much more often you're innovating with your customers, and we are so fortunate. We do an external recognition now, so patients can go and recognize their care provider.
Yeah.
We're doing things around shutting the airplane door quicker, about selling more candy bars. This goes way beyond engagement because it's the behaviors that are going to make their business better.
Sure.
So I would say, follow them. And then just be the best teammate you can, because ultimately when you get to the CEO chair, you're just another teammate, right, with a different set of things that you need to accomplish, right? And in this case, it's how do I make everybody better?
That's great. Well, listen, I can't thank you enough for spending some time with me. You and I are buddies. Full disclosure there, but I admire your vulnerability. You and I'll tell a quick story. You and I had lunch just outside of Boston, and you told me some challenges you had as a ball player, and I just, I kind of walked away from that conversation saying this guy it doesn't matter what company he leads, he's going to be very successful, and I really appreciate it as a former athlete, someone that's able to kind of put down their weapons, if you will, and say, hey, man, these are the things that I was challenged with, because we all have that. But anyway, want to thank you so much, Scott. Had a great conversation. I'll be talking to you again. I'm going to want to bring you back as well. Tell the audience how to get a hold of you guys. Obviously, go to achievers.com, but I'm going to have a lot of people in the HR space that are going to want to be interested in learning more about Achievers. How do they get in touch with you guys?
So achievers.com is a great place to start. They can reach out to me,
Yeah.
scott.landers@achievers.com. We do a lot of the shows. So we were just at Gartner. I think we've got an event over in Europe in a couple of weeks. But you can go to the website or come to me personally, and I can get you where you need to be. And Skip, I want to thank you, for all the work you do, not only within your business, but what you're doing for the masses here and helping get the word out. And it really is an honor. I appreciate all the things you said, but the reality is the biggest honor is me being able to represent those 700 folks at Achievers here today.
Yeah.
And so I appreciate it.
That's great. Hey, listen, if we could just get AI, maybe we can go back in time. I want to see if I can hit your fastball. You think I could?
I told you the story about baseball. That would be a 100% you could. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
If
And if it was anything like the one outing I had, the same guy hit 2 home runs, and it was in a 100,000-foot stadium at the War Memorial in Buffalo. It's 32 degrees, and there was nobody in the stadium. So when he hit those 2 home runs like you would, it just ricocheted and echoed throughout the whole stadium. So if we play, it's going to have to be it'll have to be wiffle ball, so it doesn't make such a hard of a sound when the ball goes over the
my
wall.
arm anymore, so I don't even know if I can handle that. But I'll tell you a quick story. My only pitching experience at the pro level, I hit 2 batters. I thought I had to be fast. I was a hitter. I could hit, could hit anything pretty much, but they needed someone to do some mop-up duty. And they're like, "Oh, you pitched in high school." I'm like, "Yeah, I can do this." And I went in there and plunked the first guy, popped up the second guy, plunked the next, and I got asked to leave. So
See, that's why the pitchers need more respect. The pitchers need more. The pitchers need more respect. It's not just about the home runs.
well, what do they say? Yeah, well, I won't say it. Okay, I'll give you that. I'll give you that. But I'm not sure I'd go deep on you though. I'm not so sure. But thanks again, Scott. Really appreciate it. We'll be talking soon. Say hello to everyone up in Boston for me. I miss them all, and
Will do.
we'll talk soon.
All right. Thanks, my friend.
Thanks, my
Have
friend.
a good
See ya.
one. Take
Bye.
care. Bye-bye.